Hello, everyone. Welcome. Welcome. Sorry for the slightly later start. We were just having a little technical stuff. Anyways, welcome to everyone to this latest Spin talk. This is our final public talk of our Spin series of 2025-2026. There's a bit of sadness, but I imagine, like me, everyone has a lot of marking to do, or most people do. So I'm Dr. Elspeth Van Vieren, an associate professor of global politics at the University of Bristol, but I'm also one of the coordinators of SPIN. And for those who are new to us, I know that there's a lot of spinsters in the room, but for those who have not joined us before today, and for those maybe who might be joining us via our YouTube channel, SPIN is the Secrecy, Power, and Ignorance Research Network, a group of academics and artists principally based in the southwest of the United Kingdom and in Wales, though expanding to other corners of the globe. And we're all committed to exploring the social, cultural, and political power of unknowing in different ways. And this includes supporting research on secrecy, on intelligence operations, on conspiracy theories, knowledge inequalities and ignorance, and a host of other cognate concepts and issue areas. So today I'm super pleased to welcome two researchers and co-authors who have a great paper and talk on the entanglements of conspiracy theory cultures, and alien invasions, US national security, and celebrity culture. So very timely. Oh, I can hear a little bit of echo. So if anyone's got their mic on, I think we're okay. So very timely in that I think the Trump administration has only just released a new set of declassified files relating to UFO sightings. So this is not something that's disappearing from our news cycles or from our lives. So specifically, I want to welcome and invite Dr. Louise Pears, who's an associate professor in global security and gender in the School of Politics and International Studies at Leeds University. Her research interests are in feminist security studies, popular culture, and world politics, and with an interest in the everyday practices of world politics, along with Dr. Anna Miller, also from Leeds, who works at the intersection of gender and disability studies, as well as on the sociology of knowledge, which informs the current work on secrecy and popular culture. So they'll speak for approximately 20 minutes, with time after for questions and discussions as usual. But before I turn over to them, I'll mention that I'm recording the session to add to our collection for people to revisit or to tune in later. I'll be monitoring the chat for questions, so you can put those up right away or comments, and we'll save some time as usual at the end for to review those and address them. I'll also remind our spinsters in the room that we do have one more event. It's not a public event, but we do have one more event in the form of the rescheduled working paper session for Lisa Stampnitsky on rethinking the power of exposure in a post-hypocrisy era on the 11th of June, alongside alongside our final research in progress session and our research catch-up. If you're not already following us and helping us to get our events out on Blue Sky or LinkedIn, please do that, because it really helps us to get the word out for our talks and things like that, and for any new publications we have out. You can also tune in to our news updates through the JISC mailing list. Okay, so that's all the notices. I will turn over now to our fantastic speakers and their great paper. Welcome, everyone, and welcome, Anna and Louise. Over to you.
Thanks so much, and thanks for that intro, Elspeth. Yeah, I'm Louise, and I will kick us off to kind of talk about our central claim of this paper, but I will do it after a little musical interlude. Does that music play for you? Maybe I won't do it after a musical interlude. Oh, if you can't hear it, you just have to imagine the dulcet tones of Tom DeLonge's Alien Exist in the background. But we want to explore this relationship between the US disclosure of UAP reports through the interesting angle of a relationship with the Two Stars Academy of Tom DeLonge. So there was the congressional hearings around the existence of unidentified aerial phenomenon, that was then produced an immediate report on the existence of UAPs as a move from UFOs, and the establishment of the Aero office that would look into this. And what we're really interested in is how in this instance, information was disclosed and shared through the language of transparency, but actually by the end of it, we know, if not, we knew almost nothing, if not less than we knew at the beginning of this big experience of kind of disclosure and transparency. So we're looking at the way that this disclosure was mediated through ideas of conspiracy, through Tom DeLonge as a conspiratorial figure, multiplicity, they didn't really settle on any kind of single explanation of the UAP, and ontological taboos around aliens as just a ridiculous topic to discuss in ways that we think actually stabilised ignorance rather than reduce it. So it wasn't just that they removed information from the system, they seemed to add it back in, but they did legitimise their disclosure through these kind of epistemic mediations. So we've called the paper Aliens Exist, but what we're saying is that by the end of this could be aliens or not, and that is kind of held as completely unknown through this process of disclosure.
Okay, so this is where I come in, and I very much bring an expertise in Tom DeLonge studies to this, but I'm also a sociologist with an interest in questions around knowledge, power, and the processes through which knowledge is legitimated. So I originally came to Louise to ask her what the security studies response had been to the fact that aliens exist now, and she said that there wasn't one because they don't. But I was very interested in the fact that there have been these congressional hearings and that Tom DeLonge is claiming to have unspecified links to the White House, at which he is working with, in his words, to disseminate the truth to the public about the alien phenomena in a way that is palatable and doesn't incite fear. So I guess what we're interested in is the push and pull between these discourses in terms of what is revealed and what is hidden through these processes and through these hearings, and ultimately just what is Tom DeLonge doing here. And so now we're going to show you our video of a UAP. So this was originally released by the To the Stars Academy and has since been referred to in the UAP report. So of the videos, the To the Stars governor and director of programs is quoted as saying, "In these uncertain times, it is more important than ever that governments speak the truth to their citizens, as it is the most important pillar of democracy. We are committed to the leadership at the Department of Defense for sharing the truth with TTSA, and we're optimistic that they will contribute to share more information as transparently as it becomes publicly available." So we'll play the video, and I'll allow you to enjoy that.
You can't enjoy it because it will not play for me. Do you want me to faff around for a second in the background?
Yeah, you can faff around for a second in the background and I will just kind of describe what's happening at the kind of early stages of this video. But they make some very interesting claims in the captions of this video as it's kind of loading up around the robustness of the technology that's being used in terms of filming the phenomenon, and as to the credibility of the witnesses. And it draws to mind a quote that I'm going to read from Jodie Dean's Aliens in America. So the quote goes like this: "Serious UFOologists distance themselves from contactees, channelers, hoaxers, and nutcases. For them, the point is not to establish the undeniability of extraterrestrials hovering over small Midwestern towns. Rather, it is to involve scientists and the government and public in serious investigation of anomalous phenomena and experiences." So what we see in the kind of releasing of this video is that Tom DeLonge never has to show that aliens exist. He just has to show that the government has acknowledged that UAPs exist and are a legitimate threat. So we'll see if Louise can get the video going before.
I can, I think. If I share it, if I just go directly to YouTube, my friends. Okay. Is that showing for you? No. Fun times.
We can just see your Zoom screen.
There we go.
There you go.
Okay. There you go. You just saw a UAP moving in ways we cannot explain, apparently against the wind, which I find quite interesting. And you may have seen some of those kinds of like little disclosures and captions coming up there to sort of legitimate the sort of robustness of these videos. Are you going to throw the slides back up, or do you want me to just go?
I will throw them back up. We make a slide. You can see I've become a Teams native.
Yeah, you're doing well.
There you go.
Okay, Bill, you can skip on. Fantastic. So some of you may have seen us give this presentation before, and the last time that we sort of visited this paper in a presentation situation, we were searching for a framework to help us kind of theorize and understand what was happening here in these processes of disclosure, and specifically in terms of what becomes hidden and what becomes revealed in these processes. So since then, we've settled on agnotology, or the study of ignorance, in terms of how this is produced and structured and governed, rather than understood as simply the absence of knowledge. So we argue that, in fact, in this case, ignorance is often produced after disclosure, deliberately produced after disclosure, and that the UAP disclosures operate through these mediated disclosures rather than through transparency. So there's a simultaneous circulation of multiple explanations of what these things could be. So extraterrestrial, foreign adversary, classified domestic technology, which prevents any kind of epistemic closure. So Tom DeLonge's role as a kind of conspiratorial figure not only anchors the disclosure in a field that we have already kind of decided is speculative and unserious. So we're drawing directly on Aradou's deployment of this in their paper, Assembling Non-Knowledge, to argue that non-knowledge is being actively assembled in these disclosure processes. So ignorance is being produced and managed. So there's a quote from that work on this slide, which is: the vocabularies of non-knowledge mobilized in public controversies, from risk and uncertainty to ambiguity, error, surprise, complexity, confusion, omission, fallacy, or contingency, are more complex and varied than existing taxonomies have captured so far. So we're aiming to capture some of those complexities in the kind of heterogeneous modes of non-knowledge and their entanglements through a consideration of these congressional hearings, of Tom DeLonge's involvement in these hearings, of the merchandising that he has followed up with, and of the outputs and reports from Arrow, who we will go on to describe.
Yes, still build on a few different literatures that Anna and I are interested in. So yeah, we're still kind of asking how this is, like, what's going on here, what information is being concealed. Obviously, we build on secrecy studies and lots of the work of spinsters, but in particular looking at the way that not knowing is created, or how people can be turned away from knowing. And also in a recognition of work that's come from this group that recognise how disclosure is a process rather than a single event, that kind of happens in multiple ways and complicated ways. And so we're really interested in this idea of kind of revelation, disclosure, and transparency as things that happen over time and move in and within and through one another. I also do some work in world politics and popular culture as an area, so it also draws in some understandings of that and how pop culture always plays an important role in how we understand global politics, but it's working in a particular and distinct way here. And then Anna works in sociology, and so a lot of the kind of sociology of knowledge, and in particular the idea of popular knowledge, and we've used the work of Birchall in that. So there's kind of these three other bases along with this kind of theoretical account of agnotology that we look at, and we're really interested in kind of the non-binary binary nature of things like transparency and obscurity, of secret and truth, that we think is really well, they're really well deconstructed in this particular case, because we see how it just lives in the kind of middle and the blurred space of all of those ideas. So the first idea that we look at is the way that there's a contingency around this information, like an unknowability secured through just a multiple explanation. So this is the report that came out in 2021 as a result of the earlier hearings. The things that were new about this was that it recognised that they just do exist. UAPs do exist, as well as the language of UAP. And there was language that it presents a potential threat to flight. They present a potential threat to flight security, but also to national security. So it moved into the language of security threat. But potential explanations that then were given for UAPs were airborne clutter, natural atmospheric phenomenon, developments of classified programs by US entities, so ideas that there were parts of, it was just the US military that hadn't told other bits of the US military, or foreign adversary systems, such as technologies deployed by, and they name China and Russia explicitly, as well as other non-governmental entities. And then my favourite category of all, which is other. You'll notice aliens isn't actually on the list. But this was reported in the press as the UFO report, and was seen as this moment of revelations that aliens exist. But actually, what it says is nothing, right? That something exists, we don't really know what it is, and it could be any of these things. And in saying that it's any of those things, we think actually it prevents us from closing in on any single one of them and then scrutinising it with greater attention. So they haven't admitted to particular surveillance programs run by the US military that we could then examine or interrogate in any greater sense, or they haven't admitted to the idea that there is intelligence surveillance taking place by foreign adversaries, and particularly China or Russia. Like they don't say that isn't the case, but it could also just be the weather, or other. So that's the first way that we think that this disclosure is limited.
Yeah. And we also want to understand Tom DeLonge's role in mediating these disclosures. So the role that he plays in anchoring these disclosure process in the language of conspiracy and in the language of aliens, to position this topic as kind of unserious or speculative, and allowing the state to kind of disclose without disclosing. So these hearings don't convince us that aliens exist, but they don't tell us anything else about the UAP threat. So we can look at Tom DeLonge in a little bit more detail. So in 2017, Tom DeLonge appeared on Joe Rogan's podcast, misinformation and conspiracy notwithstanding, where he made a number of claims about his links to the White House and his role in communicating to the public the existence of, what does he call them, unidentified aerial threats. And Joe Rogan's response was one of skepticism. But it's also worth pointing out at this point that Tom DeLonge is not just well known for being kind of a conspiracy theorist or being involved in kind of conspiracy discourse, but he's also known for being like not a particularly serious guy. So his back catalogue kind of boasts songs about bestiality and your mom, and he headlined the Poo Poo Pee Pee Pop Punk Tour. It's difficult to say that one. So his credibility as like a serious researcher, or kind of serious face of disclosure is quite low. And a lot of what delegitimated his position in this conversation with Joe Rogan was, why would the government come to the Poo Poo Pee Pee guy from Blink-182? Like, it kind of doesn't make sense that he's there. Tom DeLonge's answer is that he is the only person who is offering this specific service. So what is the To the Stars Academy then? According to their website, I will read this out. They're an award-winning, vertically integrated entertainment company that create original content informed by our experiences working with the prestigious government agencies and academic institutions, told across film, television, publishing, and merchandise, with the goal of turning the world onto new ideas and new possibilities. Whatever that really means. But what it seems to mean in practice is that they sell their own branded hot sauce. They sell their own apparel, including the famous Tom Was Right, Aliens Exist t-shirt. They produce movies and books about the alien phenomena based on Tom's own research. And they also have secured government funding to do scientific experimentation on metal alloys that were found at UFO crash sites. So what we're trying to claim here is that Tom DeLonge's role in these disclosure processes is not tangential, but central to the way that this is all happening. And that he functions as a kind of like epistemic buffer that enables aliens to be spoken about, at once kind of absorbing the stigma and also delegitimizing the political seriousness of the UAP threat. So his involvement enables them to disclose UAPs whilst sort of simultaneously delegitimizing that claim. So there's a kind of an interesting moment that arises here where Tom's claim that aliens exist is legitimated through these processes of government disclosure, a claim that he has successfully merchandised, despite the fact that these rulings have actually ruled out the potential for extraterrestrial existence. But his claim kind of becomes more legitimate at the exact moment that it's also verified as false. So it's quite just an interesting moment happening there.
And then the other idea, which maybe is slightly a misnomer, is how this kind of all sits within an idea of transparency, but obscurity and conspiracy. So the All Domain Anomaly Resolution Office is ARO. Probably worth mentioning that UAPs no longer are aerial phenomenon, they're anomaly phenomenon, because sometimes they're boats. But what this agency that was set up in wake of the resolutions says is that they will reveal, we will continue to share as much information as possible at the unclassified level to inform the public of areas, activities and its findings. So in here, there is still that old gesture of hiding and keeping things secret under the remit of national security, right? I just think that's just such a beautiful thing, a beautiful sentence to say, we'll tell you everything that we can, apart from everything that we're not going to tell you, set up in the idea of transparency. And so if you look on their website, you can get kind of accounts of individual examples of UAP, and then they present their kind of investigation and their outcome of the findings in a big long list. They're all at least 10 years old, any of the accounts that they publish on there. They also have another table that includes all of the freedom of information requests that they have. And the website is, and then lots of other kind of detailed and technical reports. So what's interesting, I think, here is that there's this idea of transparency that has this particular salience in the US, and there's been this kind of greater push to have greater transparency that began with the kind of Obama administration, that was kind of codified in the kind of US Openness Act, that's not what it's called. And then it's just been this really politically contingent idea. We don't really have space in this paper to get into how that idea and the idea that we will be transparent and share all our files, Epstein, has become this big kind of moment in politics. But like Elspeth said in the introduction, we're now having Trump re-arrive in this space and say that he'll be much more transparent than any government's been before and will share all of the alien information that he has. But what they're actually doing is kind of the old school, I'm sorry, you don't have clearance to look at this. And it's doing it in a real, and then it becomes really, really boring, really, really technical and pretty old. So it's just this kind of performance of transparency that doesn't really have anything underneath it. And what I've often tell a story, if you've heard me talk about this before, but I always say to students in a particular lecture that, like, now you've got the clearance to be told about aliens now that you're like week 6 of the security course in your undergrad. So aliens exist, and they don't think that's at all interesting or funny. But the point I'm trying to make is that it just reveals how much we do not and cannot know about the thing that we're trying to study. And it gets released to us through all of these informations that actually continue to obscure rather than make apparent what's really going on here. And then the other idea that we've been working with is developing the idea of the alien taboo and stigma around talking about aliens. I mean, I'm always at the fringe of like a proper serious security studies in the truest sense with the things I look at. But telling people that I'm writing a paper about aliens probably has been the thing that's raised people's eyebrows the highest, the more kind of traditional IR folks in my school. And we think that there is just something fundamentally unserious about aliens, and that's a lot of what Went and Deval were trying to capture. their argument was that an acknowledgement of aliens is completely unsettling to state sovereignty because it's a recognition that they don't have total control over all of these things. So what they have to do is completely suppress and make ridiculous that knowledge. And so alien knowledge is like inherently made to be ridiculous and something that we can't talk about or something that we can't take seriously. And in their work, they identified these kind of four formal techniques through which knowledge about UFOs is made ridiculous or taken out of the system. So they suggested that any authoritative representations are kind of made not threatening, and that they suggest that ufology is always presented as a pseudoscience or through science fictionalizations of UFOs. Any official inquiries, and they look at the one in 1969, the Condon Report, appear to be scientific, but they're just show trials and they systematically deformed by a priori rejection of the existence of aliens. Then there's official secrecy that removes knowledge from the system. And then it's discipline in a more Foucauldian sense, so that there's like the formal attacks on paranoid style of UFO believers as a threat to rationality, and a dismissal of those people who express any public interest in UFOs as well. And I think what's interesting about these four mechanisms is that we can exactly see how they're repeated in this example, and then we can also spot moments where things have changed slightly from the way that they were captured there. But what we're interested in really is the way that the association with alien and with UFO, even if it was kind of slightly softened through the arrival of UFO instead of UAP, instead of UFO in the official language, is that it successfully kept all of this in the space of being ridiculous and wild and mad and kind of a blip on our attention radar, but that it was completely then transformed through the involvement of Tom DeLonge, rather than being any kind of admittance about something that should be taken seriously in security. And we think that that closes off the potential for any thorough or serious investigation or contestation of the security practices and the security that's happening in whatever is really going on with UAPs.
Okay, so just to kind of summarize our conclusions then, so we are seeing disclosure as a process that is mediated, not open. So in these kind of moments of disclosure, like nothing is actually being disclosed. So nothing is hidden, nothing is known. These processes mean that secrets can be revealed and hidden at the same time. And we're drawing on that framework of agnotology to show that ignorance is being produced by secrecy under the conditions that these disclosures are circulating in. And that's
excellent. Not quite it. I thought that this should really be the moment that me and Anna reveal that maybe we're aliens, and that this is all just an exceptional double bluff to throw you off the scent of our true identities. And we also wanted to end with a quote from the serious ufologist Tom DeLonge, who says that he was never just another conspiracy theorist. Don't be naive and become one yourself. Don't regurgitate the same old alien tale. I was never immature about the matter, nor should you be. I respect the fact that this is a matter of national security. Thank you, and we can take questions. I'll stop sharing.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. I am horrified by that last image of you two as aliens. That's brilliant. It's great.
We have to ask it's ChatGPT. It's AI generated, and actually, Elspeth, we asked it to do a less creepy one. The first version of it was more horrifying, wasn't it, Anna?
That's interesting that the instinct is to be horrifying. That's it. Anyway, maybe we should all get our alien. Could you imagine how that would blow up our spin popularity if we revealed ourselves to be aliens? That was great. Thank you so much, both of you. I know that yes. Okay. So we're going to segue into questions and discussion. Do you have, I guess the first question is, what are your plans to do with this paper? Do you have, is it going to be coming out soon? Is it leading to other work? Where are you sitting on this now?
We're hoping that this will come out as a paper, and this we'll take input on, but we thought international political sociology was an obvious home resting point for it, because it's in conversation with some of the work that's been in there. But we haven't like written that up or submitted it. And then we were getting, when we were kind of finalising this presentation, we were getting a bit distracted by Trump's arrival onto the alien and Hesketh's arrival onto the alien scene. And like I said, we kind of had to put a pin in where this fits with within American cultures of conspiracy and disclosure and truth and everything. But we were discussing, though neither of us work in American politics, if any of you guys do feel interested in it, that would be an obvious next point to talk about, is how this is then articulated through the kind of current political moment as a different moment from this disclosure when it was happening in 2021.
Just to jump in there, Yuda's not here, but she had wanted to come. Yuda Weldes would be a great person on US politics to reach out to, and she might very well be interested. She is actually Duval, but Duval was her supervisor. So there's some lineage there, and Alexander Wen, she knows as well. Okay, so I am going to start off with the questions, if I may, but others, I can see Brian already has one. So I will actually not abuse my chair position and turn over to Brian, who has a question.
Oh, very, very kind of you, Elspeth. Great. Thanks for that. Yeah, I wanted to. I was interested in this notion of like the flawed narrator, or that you brought up, and I mean it's kind of interesting, right? Because in a lot of areas you're trying to establish your credibility and so on. But I'm wondering in this particular area, I mean, is there a way in which people actually try to kind of appropriate this idea that they're flawed in some way? In the sense of like, no one else is going to talk about this. Like, no one will take this seriously, but I will, and I'm this kind of marginalized person, or whatever. And actually, that's like the basis of like why I'm credible. It's like because like I'm the only one that can kind of talk about these things. So yeah, I guess like is there any this kind of reverse, like kind of standard kind of status kind of work going on? And maybe if there is, I guess there isn't. But then how does that relate to kind of the evolution of this topic? Like, was there a space for more uncredible people earlier, and now that's changing and other people are coming in? Can you just talk a little bit about like how like a fringe belief gets kind of married to a kind of notion of like a fringe kind of authority?
Shall I start, and then Anna, you can come in because you know more about Tom's position. Yeah, I don't think I'd thought about it in those terms, so that's really helpful. But that's definitely true, right? It's only as an outsider, you always get that, like, only as an outsider can I be the person who can really like speak this. And Tom definitely like cashes in on that perspective. And he also does something that's like super fascinating, where he's like, and I also can't actually tell you what's happening by just telling you. I can only really tell you in a way that's palatable by writing an insane book that's a fiction, but it's not really a fiction, and like he layers all of that underneath loads of other stuff. So like his next move after this kind of potential moment where he's legitimated is that he wants to make a film about aliens, and like, and correct me if I'm getting this wrong, that's like 4 skater boys in California, like sort of a teen coming of age story, but also one of them will get abducted by aliens in the process. And you're like, I'm just not 100% sure, Tom, if that is the best way to disseminate information. But like there's that layeredness, and he almost is like, I can't tell you directly, as a way to legitimate the way, like, that it's definitely true, because I can't tell you about it without it being through a skater movie. But I like that idea of his outsider position. Anna, did you have more thoughts to add? But I
don't have an awful lot to add outside of that, except for exactly what you were saying there. In that Joe Rogan interview, there's lots of very frustrating moments where he's kind of tangling himself in knots because he just keeps saying, I can't talk about that, that's classified. So he will quite often lean on that idea of there being a particular knowledge base that he has been kind of sanctioned not to say. That's quite interesting. So then when he's releasing his kind of fictionalized. They're fictionalized, according to Tom DeLonge, they're fictionalized retellings of real events. So the events all happened. He's just drawing them together into one kind of fictionalized narrative. And I think in terms of where you're saying, like, in terms of him being an actor that is kind of being taken seriously, like no one will take seriously, but it's being taken seriously. Like the whole To the Stars company, the whole point of that company is to do that, because the board of directors is like ex-CIA, ex-NASA, ex-scientists, and they lean very heavily into the idea that they are like a multi-corporate scientific research, entertainment, merchandising like company. The facets of that company are quite wide in terms of the service that they offer. But what he kind of says is like, there's no one else that is doing this. There is no one else that is offering this to the government as a service, and this is what I am offering as a specific thing, which is this kind of like mediation between the knowledge that would be frightening and difficult to digest, and him kind of gradually disseminating that.
Yeah, I could just come back on that. Yeah, I think it's like a really interesting question. When does this like, or I love to tell you but I can't, or yeah, whatever. When does that kind of play become get treated as not credible? Like I think that would be an interesting thing to map in this study, because I mean, of course, people make those sort of moves kind of all the time, rhetorical moves in all sorts of domains, and sometimes they are kind of like, ooh, and then in other times it's like, what? So I think just kind of like, yeah, mapping that over time. And then I think another literature you might want to look at is just the I don't know how to even refer to it, but I mean, I suppose, occultist studies or anthropology of religion or something like this, where people try to speak to the kind of ineffable, and it's like, or like some forbidden knowledge, and I mean, where it's like the act of, first of all, the act of trying to speak it is itself a kind of like, whoa, like like you're not supposed to talk about that, and so there's this whole kind of breaking with the in-group kind of dynamic. But then there's also the like, well, but I can't really convey it either. Like I can kind of point the way, but like I can't actually tell you, because like it's not reducible to words. Okay, I mean that's obviously a little bit different than what you're talking about, but still, I think where there's this kind of both you're kind of breaking with the group, but then not being able to speak to the out group. I don't know if I can kind of say it that way. I mean, there's that kind of double dynamic, which which seems to be so in your case as well. So maybe there's something kind of there's some interesting parallels there too.
Sorry,
That's really helpful.
Brian, is that in your magic book, that idea of the sort of breaking with the in-group? Is that stuff that you've written about, or is that part of the newer project? Because I think that's really interesting.
Sure. I mean, I wrote a book about Revelations. I mean, it's there. But if I were to think about some others, I mean, I'll try to dig up some references and put them in the chat. But
that'd be great.
Joshua Gunn wrote a very interesting book about occultist rhetoric. I don't know, it's about 20 years old now, but it was still fascinating. But it's all about this, like Aleister Crowley. I mean, if people know who that is, but yeah, this kind of idea of this flawed character who becomes the one who then kind of speaks for what cannot be spoken, but in a flawed way, because you can't really speak for what can't be spoken. So and the use of, like in Crowley's case, lots of like cryptic revelations, and that people had to then decipher, and then there was a whole kind of like, who can figure out what he really means? Like, it's like he said 72, it's like 72, it's like, okay, well, if that's the number, then, and then people go off and try to figure out what that means. So, I mean, I don't know if you're getting that kind of like, kind of audience kind of attempt to kind of decoding what's being said here, and then it kind of goes off in all sorts of ways. But, that's definitely part of the history of a kind of occultism, and say it this way.
Brilliant. Sorry, Louise, I overstepped.
No, I was just going to say that's really good. And also there's like Tom DeLonge. I mean, things that Tom DeLonge has said aliens might be is like, from the future, from the past, the thing that built the aliens, already with us, but just in a different dimension. What else, Hannah? like why just like he never settles on what they are. And then at the same time also aliens are not his only pet project. He also talks about what else does he believe in? Maybe the reason you can't get a good picture of Bigfoot is because Bigfoot is grainy. Have you thought about that? So yeah, there's also no consistency in the way that he does it, but I think that literature would really help us unpack some of what he's doing.
Wonderful. Sorry, Anna, did you want to come in, or are you?
I think that largely covers covers the different kind of facets of his explanations.
If I may, so what Brian was saying and your discussion now, I'm not sure this is the contribution or the focus of this particular paper, but if there's something that does speak to another kind of binary that Brian is talking about, you mentioned the Lisa and the others, this idea of exposure as a process. Well, this idea of insider outsider, like, and the inside outside. This is again, Brian, I don't know if this is in your upcoming book about binaries, but this is a good example of this kind of outsider as truth speaker, and yet insider breaking with the in-group, and so moving through those different positions and almost kind of, and they're geospatial positions, right? So then there's subject positions that are also geospatial positions of sometimes I'm the insider, sometimes I'm the outsider. Sometimes I occupy a space that constitutes an inside, and sometimes I occupy a space that constitutes an outside. And so there's something really interesting geospatial that's not just about multiplicities going on that produce an unknowability. It's also something about geospatial mobilities, or I don't know. There's something going on there about insider outsiderness. Not saying that you have to address this in this paper because there's a lot going on, but it did make me think about this as something, a fantastic example of another binary of the secrecy kind of world that needs to be troubled, and that this example really does a good job of troubling. Anyway, sorry, I don't know if I've does anyone else have a question or a comment?
I think there's one in the chat about the political economy of it, which is also something we've talked about, isn't it, Anna? Because he's really rich, and he is selling things, and he capitalizes on this on his tour, and yeah, he's producing these bananas books and making money off it, and it is a really interesting facet, but again at the moment it's one that we've sort of put a pin in, but it also speaks back to that insider outsider thing, because I was thinking that like he is much more invested in the idea that he's like a little what does he say, Anna, about being like have a unique voice position to the youth or something? I can't remember.
Yeah, he says that he's got like the ear of the youth, and that and like in one of the preambles to his book, what's quite interesting is he claims different versions of how he got involved in with kind of like governments and things, but one of the versions is that he was already having meetings with them to sort of discuss the fact that young people are becoming like quite disillusioned with the government, and that he has a kind of unique position where he kind of holds the ear of the youth or whatever, which I find quite amusing, because as a sort of devoted Blink-182 fan, I don't think that I can count. I think that the actual ear that he has is more like slightly middle-aged millennials who are still kind of engaging with this content. But there have been, I don't know, I don't think this is answering anyone's questions, but where you were saying like he is kind of capitalizing on these moments. There are like the song that we played at the beginning, I don't know if anyone could hear it, but there's a line in that where he says, we all know conspiracies are dumb. And then in the kind of recent tour where he sings that, he pauses and then he goes, no, they're not. And then the crowd like cheers, because there's been this kind of shift in his persona as like a conspiracy theorist to someone who is kind of like proven to be right, yeah, and like has proven that aliens exist through some of these processes and things. So this is just some kind of like interesting moments in how that's happening.
And then to tie that back into the political economy, he just doesn't recognize that he's really old, he's not that cool, and he's really, really rich. Like,
Careful, how old is he?
yeah, well, like much older than 19, which is absolutely where his identity has settled. Like, that he's just this like anti-establishment young lad.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, you're like an incredibly rich owner of like lots of production companies and have a power in this that you're both using, exploiting, and not acknowledging.
And
in so
as
much.
Natalie put in the chat, you know, the IPE, the political economy of this, and I think of conspiracy theories. I don't know if enough work has been done on political economy of conspiracy theories, and not just how the media as a kind of a capitalist enterprise um, kind of enables and supports this, or how people get rich off of it, but how people with money also benefit from it, right? So sort of think about some of the wealthiest people. I mean, we all hold conspiracy theories, right? We're all conspiracy theorists in some different ways. But I mean, Elon Musk, a lot of these men have, sorry, I can't think of, I'm sure that there's some women that have a lot of money that are also conspiracy theorists, but the ones that are particularly dominant in these conversations are men, and they have a lot of money and they're pushing these conspiracy theories. And so disentangling all of that is quite interesting. Um, yeah, I've been personally looking at the red pill stuff popularized by to make profit, to push sort of, if you we'll teach you how to take the red pill and free yourself from the conspiracy theory if you just pay $1,000 to take my course on how to be red pilled.
Yeah, or the investment, like, and now that you've taken it, you should join my investment group,
Yeah.
which
Yeah, if you're truly red pilled, you will buy into my products. Absolutely. Um, yeah, so I think there must be some work there to be done. Right. So the paper is going to be aimed for IPS. Do you think you'll have time and energy to devote more more outputs and more to this?
we would love to. But Anna needs a job. So
Okay.
whether the most strategic thing to write about for her is aliens,
Yeah.
because your other line of work is kind of in medical sociology, right? Um, but yeah, we'd like to keep it up. It's a source of great joy.
Okay. Well, if you need any more support from us, let us know. But if there aren't any more questions or comments, I think that this has been a great talk, and we're going to just draw a line there. Any final thoughts from anyone? Should we give them a round of applause and thanks for sharing with us? Thank you so much, guys. Oh, and a comment from Natalie, also work to be done perhaps around masculinity here, absolutely, and links to authority and hierarchies of different kinds, absolutely. So thank you so much. Yes. Great. Okay. And so I guess I'll just one more plug for the people who are our regulars. Do come to our research in progress session next month and Lisa's working paper session. And yeah, that's it. Thank you so much. Thanks both.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone. See you
Thank you.
soon. Bye.
Bye.